firstly, I wanted to thank everybody who has joined us today. And Julie, we've got a lot of people who have, I know, been very much looking forward to our discussion today. And just as a bit of an introduction to anybody who is in the shadows as to your accolades, I just wanted to go over that you are the author of not only the Mentoring Manual in its 2nd edition, but Brilliant Coaching and the Coaching Manual, which I think are also in their 4th and 5th editions.
Correct, yes.
And the Mentoring Manual has been translated into French, German, and Romanian.
Romanian, well remembered. Yeah, good. Yes, it has recently. Yeah, we're just about to do a giveaway of the French edition on LinkedIn to try and see if we can access some French speakers. Yeah, it's lovely. And it's lovely as an indication of how this work is traveling, of how the mentoring field is starting to form and develop develop that interest.
And reach all corners of the world, which is absolutely fantastic.
Yes.
Obviously. So yes. Our theme today is all about mentoring stories because that's our theme for our run up to National Mentoring Day, which is on the 27th of October.
Yes.
Fast approaching. And so we're going to talk about the stories. We're going to talk about your story, your story about how you got to write the mentoring manual. And also a little bit about your story as in your mentoring and coaching work, because you head the team up at, obviously, at Starr Coaching.
At Starr, yeah.
So, but before we go into that, I found something in the mentoring manual that just fits this theme, because obviously you use stories a lot in the manual too.
Yes.
So I just wanted to read this to those people who are with us today who haven't actually picked up on this detail. So in the mentoring manual, you use various things like exercises, hints and tips, and you have a toolkit, but you also have the storyteller. And this is what it says. These are fictional examples to illustrate a principle or idea and use imaginary situations and people. They are inspired by my own work in this area and are sometimes real situations combined to use features of both stroke all of them. Here, I'm also demonstrating a key technique you can use to mentor others, namely to tell stories from your own experience. And I just thought that summed up what we're doing here perfectly.
Wow.
Yeah. Tell us your story about how you got to write the mentoring manual.
Okay. And yeah, I guess it's important to kind of first acknowledge I wrote the coaching manual, which is the book I was most passionate about probably at that point, which was, it's now about 25 years old. And as you say, it's in its 5th edition and travels all around the world in terms of translations. And then as a derivative of that, the work that we do in organization is to give these conversational coaching skills to managers and leaders. And that's why I wrote Brilliant Coaching. And when Pearson approached me to write an offering in the mentoring space, acknowledging its growth as an area of interest for practitioners, I initially said, I don't think I've got a book inside me on that topic. I'm not kind of focused enough for myself as a practitioner in that field to think I have something distinct to offer in terms of a different level of conversation or something that hasn't been said. There's a principle of the publishing market, and for anybody that's interested in writing a book, I'm sure lots of you are, there's a principle that even if you are the best writer and very knowledgeable about a subject, you've kind of got to have something unique yourself to say, something that expresses your authentic view, that is a distinct offering from anything else out there. So you kind of can't write a better version of the same book twice. It sort of doesn't work, and it's almost a corruption, because you're not on your own edge creatively. You just you read this book, you thought you could write it better, and then you produce a better version of it. There's kind of no engine of possibility in that, let's say. And so I kind of said, I'm not sure, I'll think about it. And then no, I don't think so. And then when they came back to when my editor at Pearson came back a second time, I thought, okay, let me go into reflection and kind of meditation a bit on this and kind of dwelling with it. And I had a look at the main books at that time and started to realize there was an issue with trying to distinguish mentoring at behavioral level. So what does a mentor do? What does a mentor not do? What does a coach do? What does a coach not do? And I got very frustrated with that as a perspective, because for me, the difference of the two activities is less in the aspect of behavior and more in the perspective of the nature of the relationship, the purpose of the relationship, the objectives of the relationship, and then the natural trajectory, kind of the plot arc, just to use a storytelling metaphor. The plot arc of a relationship essentially is different. And I started to get a bee in my bonnet about that, as I do. I mean, you know me as horribly opinionated. And I started to think, okay, maybe I have got something to say. And then I went into further inquiry and started to understand, a bit like I did with the coaching manual, which is to think, if these are the behaviors that we're trying to express and these are the skills we're trying to develop, what are the beliefs that enable all of that to happen? You know, the kind of beliefs at that generative level that enable us to act in a certain way. And when I went into, again, inquiry about what were the underpinning elements of this mentor relationship, I started to uncover the mentor archetype, because it's an ancient archetype. You know, it's sort of the difference between the character mentor, as everybody probably knows, is from Homer's Odyssey, and it's an older, wiser person that's been, given the care of this young boy, and started to realize this energetic dynamic sets up certain behaviors that predicate mentoring. And so it was really, I mean, I could burn our hour just talking about this journey of inquiry, kind of steeping myself in something, trying to respond to these questions that I thought weren't being answered by the more kind of academic things, or the books. And I'll be respectful. Obviously, I want to be respectful. The books that kind of have a book on coaching and mentoring, but actually they're a book about coaching. They kind of pay lip service to mentoring, but then start to really unpack coaching as skills, because obviously they're enabling skills of the kind of mentoring a lot of us want to do. So I got a bee in my bonnet about all of that and kind of went on this journey and thought, I went back quite fast and said, I have something to say. I have quite a lot to say. And I loved writing the book. It was a complete delight. And it was a surprise as well, because I began thinking, I don't want anything to do with that conversation because I don't like and then I thought, oh, hang on, I think I can offer something that's a twist.
And was that the driver, with the delight in being able to differentiate between the two different skill sets? Is that
it was that, but it was also these underpinning principles that shape the nature of the mentoring relationship. So when I went back and inquired, and this is a useful inquiry for anybody to do, and you've probably already begun it or done it. When you look at the people that you would call mentors in your life, or the mentors that we recognize as mentors in film and fiction and fable, anybody from Professor Dumbledore in Harry Potter to Mary Poppins, or any of these kind of archetypes, these wise elders that we see in kind of films like The Karate Kid, which is really obvious. You've got this sage-like gentleman mentoring this younger boy. When you see these, you instantly recognize what impact a mentor has upon you in your life, and you wouldn't call that coaching. And so as you look at the people that you would call mentors in your life, whether it be your favorite teacher at school, or perhaps a friend of the family, or somebody you used to work with or work for, somebody that shaped your thinking about life and shaped your perspective and responses sometimes, and giving you those default, I would never, here's what I would do, always try to do. Here's the things I would never want to do, or here's who I would never want to be. You know, they'll have done that by example, or, you know, other ways that we inspire people. So yeah, or stories. And so it was that fascination, because I am a storyteller, as well as the books you've mentioned. I write novels for young adults.
Yes.
And so I've studied storytelling and plot arcs and the whole Robert McKee journey of script writing and all that stuff. So I started to realize, actually, there's an ancient wisdom here as well that is not being shared with people, that gives us all access to just this intuitive knowing, like, that's a mentor. They impact how I view life or how I feel about myself. And sometimes that happens in a coaching relationship, but it's quite distinct in a mentor relationship.
Yeah, I categorically agree with that. And tell me, what do you think it is actually about the use of storytelling that is so effective in mentoring?
Well, before I say that, let me spread caution, because storytelling, if used appropriately, from an appropriate sense of the situation, and when we're kind of present and in flow, and not kind of too much egoically driven in terms of, oh, I've got this great story, this great thing happened to me, I should tell them about this because it's a wow factor. You know, the kind of when I was at INSEAD kind of line. When we develop enough self-awareness to be able to be cognizant in the moment of when it's appropriate to step forward and perhaps share somebody, there's actually a bodily sense of that, rather than just a excitement or I'm stuck in the conversation, I don't know, I know, I'll tell them about the time I met Prince Harry or whatever. So there's a cognizance about why we're telling the story. But I think stories are ancient, aren't they? And you know, it's tribal, and it has that function of the wise elder and the sitting in circles telling stories. I think one of the wonderful things about stories, and this is as true for mentoring and coaching, quite often your reason for sharing the story is you hope somebody's going to see this. And quite often they get something else entirely. You know, somebody, like the stories I've been telling this morning, there might be somebody listening and thinking, I want to write a book. I need to go through this process to make sure, you know, there might be somebody that's gone away from mentoring and just thought, oh, that would be a useful shopping list for me to do about this book I think I want. So the stories you tell people, it gives people that freedom of being able to take things, leave things, and allow that resonance to their own themes, their own challenges, the things that they're working with right now, the situations that are cropping up in life, and it has that flex in it, I think.
So the individual interpretation of the story.
Yeah. And also, this is a bit Jungian in terms of its touch point, but it's that, you know, this, whether you call it the change curve or the plot arc, you know, the hero's journey, that's used for all good script writing, all good storytelling, all, you know, this is life. You know, stories are about challenges, overcoming challenges, becoming, you know, resting in a different place because of the learning we've had, because of the road we've traveled, if you like. And that again sets up this archetypal element, this kind of resonance with who we are as people. When we hear the humanity in somebody's story, when we hear the vulnerability perhaps of, and maybe this is the difference between a looking good story, which I'm saying have caution. Maybe there's you know, because in a looking good story, I'm probably less vulnerable in the examples I'm giving or the story I'm telling. You know, there's a humanness that comes through storytelling, which is a sharing. I'm sharing my life. I'm sharing who I am. I'm sharing what I found difficult, with a humility perhaps that says maybe this is an offering that you might benefit from, and maybe it isn't.
that fits in actually with exactly what we were talking about before everyone joined the call, and my own learning story of when
yes, tell us that.
The ABM set up an assessment centre
Yes.
for our members to go through to really gauge where they were in their mentoring positioning and what they needed to work on and where they were excelling, etc. Yes. So obviously it was run by David Clutterbuck and Bob Garvey and Nigel Stone, and so it was quite a punchy panel, and I put myself through it and failed, and which was a massive shock. But
so was it like a practical demonstration or something? You had to do a role play of mentoring?
Well, there were various steps. So we had to be observed in our mentoring, in a mentoring session.
Yes.
We had to submit case studies. We were interviewed.
Yes.
I mean, it was quite a proper process.
Rigorous. Yeah.
I quite liked that challenge just to make sure, but it was a slap in the face when I didn't get through. And I remember Professor Clutterbuck saying to me, he said, you think you're listening, but you're not. And but what came out of that was this amazing, I had 6 mentoring sessions with Professor Bob Garvey, and which was transformational in my mentoring. And so, yeah, there we go. And it was humility. And that's the reason why I really enjoy telling the story, is because we need to, as mentors especially, we need to be able to embrace that and learn from it, which is, I think, the point that you were making.
Yes, isn't it perfect? And that's why I responded with when I didn't get a job, and that really was a reality check for me, because I thought I'm doing this job, I'm great at this job, and they didn't give me the promotion. So and it kind of knocked me back. Yeah, it is. It's a reality check, which is really useful. Yeah, really useful.
Yeah.
So yeah, perfect. Yeah. Exposure, vulnerability, great.
So so tell me, do you do a lot of mentoring still?
So obviously I have my one-to-one exec coaching assignments, and those have characteristics to those relationships that probably start to merge and blur the lines sometimes, because they're not performance related. The senior guys that I'm dealing with, they're not performance related in that way, and so the relationships that I tend to develop go a little bit deeper perhaps than coaching. So at a professional level, I'm not doing I don't do mentoring for a living. That's not what I do. I do coaching, and I do it. We do deep work, and it gets into who people are and who they're being and how people are, things like that.
So I have no doubt that there will be mentoring woven in there somewhere.
Maybe.
And tell me about Leap.
Leap the movie.
Yes, you featured.
I did. Yes, that's a while ago. So I think that's about 7 or 8 years ago. I was invited to appear on a movie with a rack of other coaches, everybody from people you'd heard of, like, I don't know, Marshall Goldsmith, or people that were up in the NLP world, to practitioners that were much less well known. And it was a kind of crazy experience, because we flew out to Spain to discuss the project, and then we flew out to Los Angeles, and then went back to Los Angeles to help promote it, and then out to Spain for various things. So there was a lot of travel involved, and a lot of networking with different coaches and mentors, and a lot of immersion in other people's world of coaching and mentoring. So I have my this is how I do it, and I guess we all have, and some of the formative development stages is trying to figure out what that actually is. But by now I'm pretty confident in terms of the foundation from which I work. But then having to work alongside and coach alongside and be filmed and observed coaching alongside or mentoring alongside other practitioners that are completely different was both frustrating and annoying and inspiring, probably in equal measures, because I saw people doing stuff that I was absolutely appalled at. And then I was also seeing people doing things thinking, wow, that's so creative. Why, why am I so stuck in the way that I do? People were taking people out for walks in nature, or, sitting under trees, or getting them to do art type stuff. Or even like body work. There was some great body workers and body coaches that were having people feel differently in their body. It was just, again, completely inspiring. So yeah, it was a mad idea, because I think they had probably 5 different coachees, everything from somebody that was starting a sexy lingerie business for big ladies. I can't remember what, Curvy Girl Lingerie, I think it was called. So it was Curvy Girls Lingerie, this young entrepreneur, she was amazing, to, I think they had a 40-year-old virgin that wanted to find a relationship, to a Fox News anchor that had been sacked and publicly humiliated, let's say, to the guy I was coaching was an executive coaching coachee called Soon Liu that was working out in Bhutan. And so mine was a more what I recognized as normal coaching, but then you had everything else going on, and you had, the way that they'd cast it, you had temper and tantrums, and it kicked off quite a lot. So it was, it was a really interesting.
So and that's if anyone is interested in watching that, they can go via your
on
website.
Netflix.
It's on Netflix. Leap,
yeah. Leap.
Yeah.
It's probably down at the bottom of somewhere, but it's probably still on there.
Yeah. Brilliant, fantastic. Now I know that there's quite a few people who'd like to ask you some questions, but I'd like to invite a couple of our participants to share their own stories. And firstly, I'd very much like to extend a warm welcome to Angela Marker from the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women. And Angela has been a mentor and a mentee on the Mentoring Women in Business program, which pairs business professionals with female entrepreneurs from low and middle income countries. It's a fascinating program.
Yes.
And so I'd like to invite Angela to tell her recent story of her mentoring. So, Angela, you there?
Yes, hi, thank you. Hi. Thank you, Kerrie. Hi, everybody. Lovely to hear your stories, Julie, as well. It's been really great to hear everything that you've been sharing. But yeah, I'll quickly tell you my story of my recent mentoring, as you said, Kerrie, on the Mentoring Women in Business program. It was honestly so transformational. I absolutely loved it. I've done mentoring before, but there was nothing like this experience. So last year, I had the wonderful experience, the wonderful opportunity to mentor a woman called Asen. And she's a woman entrepreneur from Nagaland, India, running a bakery business. And it just began as a commitment of just 2 hours a month over the course of a year. And it turned into one of the most rewarding journeys I've ever been on. And so, yeah, it was just absolutely incredible. The foundation, as you said, matches business professionals with women entrepreneurs in low and middle income countries. They match based on, so the mentors, like my experiences, my interests, my own development goals, as well as my mentees' need for guidance. And in her case, it was around scaling her business. And I went into this talking about being humble or humbled. I went into this thinking it was just about supporting my mentee and what I could do for her. But I really quickly realized how much I was gaining from the experience as well.
Yeah.
It was just a beautiful experience and connecting with a woman entrepreneur in an entirely different country and culture. That in itself was immensely rewarding, inspiring, eye-opening. I learned about operating a business in a totally different environment, and it opened my eyes to face my own challenges in a totally different way as well. There was so much that I had to learn from the experience. I say one of the most significant takeaways was the growth that I felt in that experience.
Your own growth?
My own growth, yes. It pushed me to think creatively about solutions. It totally refined my communication skills, and to make sure that I was empowering and for my mentee and responsive to her unique needs. I learned to see problems from new angles, and I felt so many of my skills grow over the course of the year. And the program's training and e-library of resources were absolutely invaluable in supporting me every step of the way. And when we started, I would say my mentee, she didn't have a lot of structure or clarity in running her business, and she was risking burning out. She had really big goals, but was really struggling to take steps towards them. But with the mentoring, I supported her to get better work-life balance and to figure out the right steps to grow, the scaling back in order to grow in the right way. But one of the things I actually loved seeing was how much she struggled with confidence as an entrepreneur. And there really wasn't a lot of support, or isn't still a lot of support for women entrepreneurs in this small rural area of India. But now she's a founding member of a women's entrepreneurs association in her town of
amazing.
Which is just watching her evolve into a confident business leader in her community is the most inspiring thing for me. And it reminded me of how much I had to learn. It reminded me of the importance of things that I maybe take for granted, such as adaptability, empathy, support systems, not just in mentoring, but in all areas of life. And knowing her and knowing that I played a part in her success was just so rewarding. And with my own skills as well, as I said, being able to develop my skills it was challenging and rewarding as well, and reinforced that value of continuous learning, that growth mindset. It was, honestly, one of the most amazing experiences ever. And actually, I hope this gives you some insight into the incredible rewards of mentoring. And actually, the program is open right now for the next cohort. So if anyone here is considering mentoring, I really, really encourage you to consider it. On this program, it's just 2 hours a month, and I can personally attest to how much you can gain from the experience. And registrations for new mentors and the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women Mentoring Women in Business program is open until the 11th of October. So if you're interested, feel free to ask me a question, or feel free to register. It's the perfect time to get involved. And I hope this story has given a bit of inspiration or interest for anyone here.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the fact that you have completely and utterly proven that mentoring is a learning alliance. It's very much that, and I love that phrase because it encapsulates exactly, well, your story and hopefully a lot of others. But thank you very much for sharing, Angela, and well done. That's amazing work.
Thank you. I'll share the link if anyone's interested.
Yeah, do. Julie, do you have any questions for Angela?
I guess what I was interested in is your learning. What did you take from that has shaped the way you operate now as a mentor? So what was the kind of distilled wisdom or experience that you take with you? Because obviously there was that as the experience, like this was amazing, it was inspiring, I got to watch this, it was a privilege. But how has that experience shaped who you are and how you are around, being a mentor for others?
Oh, that's a great question. It reminded me that everybody is unique and individual, and actually being a professional in working in a global organization, but actually being in the UK, I tend to have, and growing up in the UK, I have a very Eurocentric view of the world.
Yeah.
And this experience in particular really highlighted to me how I cannot apply that same view for all my interactions, and especially not in my mentoring. I really had to peel back my own assumptions.
Yes.
And my own, the assumptions I move through the world with. I had to really unpack those and look at things with a new lens. And that's what that experience taught me to do, and what I now hope I do still apply in my interactions, and also in when I'm working with other colleagues as well, and my day-to-day interactions.
And, you know, that's hugely important both for mentors and coaches. I often say one of the biggest barriers we've got to creating that space for the conversation, you know, and holding space of that conversation is to declutter it with our own stuff. So you kind of, your challenge is to get yourself out of the way a little bit. And so you've had the self-awareness of your own conditioning, both in how you think, how you operate, and what, you know, you might never mentor in that space again, but what you have remembered is to bring more neutrality and objectivity and less to the conversation in terms of, okay, I've got this stuff that I know and this others, you know, here's my content. And you kind of put that to one side and thought, okay, what is this? And go into more of a, you know, purer state of coaching from, mentoring from nothing, which is much more powerful for people. It takes a lot of confidence to do, because you know, these safety blankets we've got of our stuff give you that assurity. So, you know, there's a maturity in being able to put that all to one side.
I agree. And yeah, having that when it's it's all about that growth mindset and being aware that we're always learning. We can never know it all. And what do I know about running a business in rural India? But actually, that's not necessarily the most important thing here. The most important thing is that I know the right questions to ask, that I listen to her and what she's telling me.
Yes.
And ask the right question.
Wonderful. Because the benefit for the individual is it being asked the question. You know, you ask questions that you don't know the answer to. That's, if you're asking questions that you do know the answer to, there's some stuff coming in.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the inquiry that's useful for them.
Yeah, definitely.
That reminds me, Julie, of something that I've borrowed from you when you were a keynote at our conference about the onion and the onion analogy and peeling back those layers. Do you remember talking about that?
Do you know, I don't. So, and this is this happens for me a lot. People will talk about coaching conversations they've had with me, and they'll say, do you remember you said that? And it was this, and I think, I don't know that can be attributed to me, but I believe you.
Oh, you absolutely did. You had a visual of an onion up on the screen.
Did I?
Yes, you did. And you said it's all about peeling back the layers and getting to the nub, to both nubs, mentor and mentee nubs, where you, to that wonderful space where you really, really have the ability to ask any question and learn from each other. Wow. And so anyway, I'm sorry that you don't remember it, but I've taken a lot from it.
No, it's all right. Give me credit for it. I don't mind. You know.
Brilliant. Well, Angela, thanks again. Thank you very much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
We have someone else who I'd like to call upon to share a story. And this is Brenda Etchells. She is an ABM member and regional chair for the North. And she has many a story, but she's chosen one to share with us today. Brenda.
Thanks, Kerrie. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, when Kerrie asked me if I could come up with a story, there's one particular client who jumps to mind, and I always sort of pull her out as my case study or my story, because I'm kind of very proud of her, and I think, like Angela was saying, like, she inspires me, and it was a very rewarding relationship. So I've mentored / coached maybe about 60 different clients over my career, all from different industries. And like you were saying, actually, where it's an industry I know nothing about, I feel I mentor better because I'm not putting my own spin on it. Anyway, this wonderful young lady, again, a very inspiring young lady, who is a lingerie designer. I think we've already talked about lingerie today.
Yes.
So a lingerie designer with her own brand of lingerie, which was targeted at her word, the queer market, very sort of niche, great market. Newer stuff, and she was I was recommended to her, but basically she was working, I went to see her, and she was working in her parents' garage. So she was living at home, her workshop was her parents' garage. She had like maybe 2 sewing machines in this garage. It was cramped, it was tiny, there was material and lace and stuff everywhere, and she was just feeling claustrophobic and hemmed in, and it was impacting her business, it was impacting her personal life. So basically we had to get her out this garage. That was the main thing, get her out this garage. But she couldn't see the way out. So I started working with her, and we talked about, our vision and what we should like. And she very much wanted to be able to live in Nottingham, because that's where all the lace is or something. It's like capital of lace or whatever, closer to London, near her suppliers, near clients. Her boyfriend lived there. So that was her main goal. So we, like anything, put together a roadmap and a plan, and that involved things like learning to drive. There was lots of personal stuff getting related into this as well. And then after working with her for just 6 months, and I just find this amazing, she was in her own workshop in Nottingham with a bank loan to cover all the machinery. She was employing staff. She was taking on interns. She had Next coming to her as a Next brand, asking her about designing lingerie for them. And she's now, she just amazes me. She's now set up a design. So she's now got 2 brands. She's got a design company that designs for other brands. So she does the designs. She's got a workshop where if they want, they'll manufacture the designs. And she's still got her own brand, and her own brand's almost a client of this brand. And it's just, so she's now 2.5 years in. She's still there. She's still managing to pay the bank loan. She's managing to pay staff. She's managing to pay herself. She's still, she's an intelligently bright woman, great business acumen, but she just couldn't see it in herself. She had all the answers. I needed to bring out the confidence,
and
the commitment and the conviction in her to do it. And I know I'm a bit like, well, if it wasn't for me, but I genuinely think if she didn't have a mentor with her, she'd still be in that workshop in her parents' garage, like sewing away. So I just think mentoring is just when you see, and she now lives with her boyfriend and she can drive, and it's just the whole package. It's just, it's that, you're saying it's that depth, isn't it? It's just, and we still have mentoring sessions every couple of months just to check in and see how she's doing. So that was my story. That was my lovely
story. Wonderful.
Thank you, Brenda. Have you got any questions for Brenda, Julie?
Well, I guess because it's lovely that you recognise there is something very functional about just creating that space to facilitate somebody's thoughts. And I guess I'm wondering what you took away from it, like what will stay with you about that experience, because obviously she's touched you in some way. It's got personal for you. How has that personally affected you?
I think it was the physically and visually. So having visited her in the garage and then actually been to her workshop in Nottingham, there was a physical, actual visual feeling, sense of the transformation. Do you know what I mean? It brought it to life for me, I think, actually. Yeah, it was something about that, bringing it to life and that actual sensing
and
it.
There's something very much the hero's journey about what you're describing, and because it could, it almost follows film script writing principles, because that garage became a cave. It's called the cage, and it becomes the cage, and there's the call to adventure, which is kind of you showed up that says, okay, do you want to do this differently? And so she's trapped in this frustration, this kind of no possibility situation. I can't drive, I've got no money, I'm living at home with my parents. And then there's the call to adventure. And it's whether the hero, this is what defines the hero, it's whether the hero responds to the call positively to adventure, and then becomes the road of trials, which is the personal challenges that one overcomes. And what you did was create a traveling partner for that, where she's not in the dark on that road of trials on her own, getting disheartened. She's got somebody that believes in her and can hold that space of those conversations to help facilitate and unpack her experiences and start to distill wisdom from the challenges. And so it does kind of follow that hero's journey metaphor that I was talking about, which is life, life. It's just, and this is maybe what I'm taking from it, so many of us refuse the call to adventure and action, which so many of us refuse the call. So many of us stay.
Yeah.
And it's called the refusal of the call in plot, right? quite often, you know, so this is, I'll try and be quick. This is where they've got some in film storytelling. This is where they've got some washed up Vietnam vet or alcoholic cop. I think Clint Eastwood did one of these, where he's like this washed up ex-alcoholic cop, but actually he's a bit of a ninja, but nobody knows because they've all written him off. And then somebody, you know, turns up and says, you know, here's happening, this is terrible, they've kidnapped next door's little girl or something. And it's like, no, I can't, but you know, that's not me, it's not who I do. It's like, no, you've got to come, you've got to. And then they answer the call, and then the adventure starts. So it was wonderful that you helped that young lady to facilitate her thinking into responding to that call for adventure.
I love that phrase, call to adventure.
Yeah.
And ninja, that's all very, very, very cool. So so what I'd like to do now is open up the floor to, or the screen rather, to any of our participants who may have a question. I'd really like to hear from some gentlemen. Actually, I feel like it's been quite female heavy today, which is fine, but I'm sure there's some questions out there from some gentlemen. I haven't got sight of the chat, so Barbara, I'm relying on you to.
Can people put their hand up using the, is that a thing?
Oh yes, we have a hand.
What's a hand?
Pippa,
we can't hear you.
Sorry, I'm the Teams person, not the Zooms person, so I got modded up. Sorry. It's one for Angela, actually. Just when you spoke, you talked about your European mindset and how you operate with a European lens on the world. And obviously this lady wasn't European. Whilst you learned, how did she respond to you having that European lens on the world? Because even when we try to avoid having it, sometimes we can't avoid it. It's innate in us. So I just wondered how she responded to that cultural difference.
Thanks, Pippa. That's a really interesting question. I think it comes back to that shared learning again. And it was, we were very open and honest with each other. And occasionally she would ask me, she'd say, what would you do in the UK in this situation? And I'd say, well, I would often respond with another question. But sometimes when she really pressed, I said, well, maybe we'd look at these things. Sometimes she asked me for inspiration, like different things to bake, because it was a bakery business. And I said, oh, in the UK, these things are popular. And she would go in, she would look at them and she'd say, well, I think that might work here, but I don't think that would. And it was a very honest back and forth of her appreciating what I shared and also being able to tell me that what she didn't agree with and what she didn't think. But that was because we had spent that time building the rapport as well. I think that's obviously an essential part of the mentoring relationship, is to be able to build the rapport so that your mentee feels empowered and comfortable and confident enough to tell you when they don't agree with what you said, and to be able to have a very open and honest dialogue around that. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Oh, we have another hand from Valerie.
Thank you so much for trying that hard to pronounce my name. That was lovely. That was lovely. Okay. How do I actually lower it now? Okay. So the lovely stories. Thank you everyone for sharing those. Then those are definitely, you know, hitting on a very high level. I have a question based on my personal experience with my mentees. And I don't know if it happens to you, but to me, it happens a lot of time where when my mentees are kind of mentally struggling, they're in a bad mental spot or something like that. And there's been times when they enter into the mentoring session, and instead of talking about their business or their business plan or something that I could pretty much support them in making a decision within their business, they actually try to talk about personal stuff, which is something that I'm not, you know, qualified to talk about. And I've had several occasions where they want us to discuss their mental setting for example. So how do you actually handle that?
Julie?
Oh, is that a question for me?
Yeah.
So interesting that you say you're not qualified to talk about, because there was this thing in the coaching field many years ago. I hear it less, and I don't know why I hear it less, but it became a thing at one time, which is, and maybe it still is, what's the difference between coaching and therapy? And what, when do we grey those boundaries? And as the coaching profession has become over professionalized with too many rules, and you should do this and you shouldn't do this, and it all kind of becomes a bit of a mental trap for people sometimes. I think I wonder if there's some resistance or reluctance within you to think, I should be having this kind of conversation. They seem to be wanting this kind of conversation. I'm less comfortable with that because I think I should be having this kind of conversation. And so that's sort of generating a little bit of resistance for you to having that dialogue, which is fine, and it's human. What I will say is, forget the difference between coaching and mentoring, and are we coaches and mentors? This is all one-to-one work. So you are working one-to-one with somebody to support them, and this is your commitment in that sense. And maybe a useful inquiry for you might be, am I still willing to support this relationship one-to-one at this level if this is what I've got to unpack? And cognizant or aware of the discomfort that might bring up for you in perhaps not feeling qualified or not feeling able to add value. And then I would return you to this essence of the one-to-one work, which is, your affinity, your relationship with the individual, your willingness to hold space, your willingness to be an independent viewpoint, and sometimes perhaps being willing just to facilitate their thoughts, their offloading, being a safe space for them to be able to do that without putting yourself under the pressure to be brilliant or a genius or have this amazing advice, but just perhaps acknowledging the respect that that person gives you, that they would want to show up and have this conversation maybe. So there's that. And that's a self-awareness, like what's going on with you and what's your personal learning challenge here and what's your call to adventure here in this, because you've reached a point of pressure. If I'm wrong about that, the other, another scenario might be this person isn't clear about what these conversations are about, and maybe there's a contracting, or maybe there's a more explicit conversation that you could have with them to say, look, here's the value I think I'm supposed to be adding. I just want to flag our conversations sometimes are about this, and I'm not sure whether that's useful for you, because you might have other people you can do that stuff with, that kind of talking through. What's your sense of this? Is it Valerie or Valerie?
Valerie, yeah, Valerie. You can call me Val too. That also works. So what I found, based on my experience, is unless we address those concerns of theirs that they, come in, because that kind of plays like a mental blockage for them to kind of be productive for something.
Right. Okay.
So they just want to complain about something, and they see a person in me like who shows empathy in their business in previous meetings, something that they haven't shared about personal life before. And now all of a sudden they come to me and they say, listen, it's been a tough couple of months so far, I'm really struggling to kind of make it and that kind of stuff. And I'm, without getting that out of their system, I don't think we can continue with something more productive. That's what I'm sensing. I can't rush it. I can't just kind of put it to the side and just tell them, listen, keep it up. Let's put that, let's shove it to the side. Let's focus on what we're on the agenda for today.
Yes, because there's an offloading. So something else that's a third element to this consideration is your ability to give constructive messages of feedback at an appropriate point. So for example, if I show up for a mentoring conversation and I do this kind of complain session and we offload and we let it go and then we get onto there and it ends up in a good place, then great. If I seem to be spinning my wheels here and we don't seem to be getting traction.
I've had that too. I've had that too.
So then at some point, Valerie, it might be appropriate for you to say, okay, here's what I'm noticing, and I'm wondering how your mindset is, because this isn't gonna, this isn't constructive over time. Because I'll shorthand this, and this isn't what you would say in that instance, but where somebody's operating from a victim mindset and a victim perspective, and maybe even martyrdom, being a martyr around that stuff, you can give all the great advice you want, but if my default window on the world is life is happening to me rather than I am the source of my own experience, then you can give the best advice and the best ideas, but I'm going to sit with my arm folded, which is no, you're contradicting what I feel is true, which is I'm helpless in this situation. And so the language that you might want to use with them is more towards empowered action, and having somebody be responsible for their own situations. And this isn't as straightforward as I'm making it sound, but it would be things like, okay, so what could you do? Because I'm hearing you sound powerless, and obviously that's very rarely true. We've always got options. What option do you have? What could have you feel more constructive, or what could have you feel more empowered around this situation? Because I'm noticing, I think this lack of empowerment with you is what might be the real issue here, rather than just the problem that's being presented.
Can I just jump in here for 1 second?
Yes.
Simon, I know I can see your hand up, but Julie, would this not be a prime reason, a prime space to engage in supervision, one-to-one, guided reflection sessions? And isn't that the proof that it's very important that we engage with such things?
If you don't feel equipped to handle it on your own, yeah, maybe. If you would get benefit from speaking to a third party, because you haven't got those thousands of hours under your belt that says you can do that. I personally don't have supervision, but so I'm feeling a bit dodgy in that regard. But if you do, yeah. The other thing that, if you know you need support, go and get support, and supervision is a great support. And the other thing you could do is pick up your favorite textbook and go back to the rule book and think, okay, let me just, or you can write reflection notes, whatever it might be, to support yourself. Yeah, we highly encourage reflection, whether it's group reflection, mentoring circles, or straightforward supervision for precisely these sorts of situations. Anyway, I'm conscious that time is ticking away, as it does when you're having fun. Simon.
Hello.
Hello.
I just wanted to pick up on the mental health area, actually, because for my first mentee, I had a bit of a baptism of fire. The mentee had been to A&E for anxiety. The company was on the edge of bankruptcy. So I very much hit a point where I thought, this person needs counselling, but I had to kind of work through the sessions. We looked at kind of time management, and I gave him some advice about the business, looking into limited company, because he was a sole trader, he had a house, he had a family, various issues. So it was a real struggle. I learned a lot from it, but there was a point where I just wanted to say, you probably need some counselling. But there was never that appropriate point or system in place. And I suppose the question from this is, when is it appropriate as a mentor to advise that?
So in a long and checkered history of coaching, I've only ever stepped back in one instance, and it was kind of similar to what you were describing, and it was an extreme situation. So I guess your learning as a coach and a mentor never ends. Your self-development, your own path of inquiry and growth never ends. It's why we never get bored with it, because it's enlivening us, and it's enriching us, and it's helping us realize our potential. That enables you year on year to be able to cope stay resourceful, which was what you're pointing at, and stay resourceful within a broader range of subjects and topics, and stuff you can deal with. So, for example, the more you learn about addiction, or the more you learn about, I don't know, emotional trauma or redundancy or whatever it might be, the more you have to offer. And I think what you're pointing at is you got to the limit, you got to your own limit, which is, I'm not sure I've got lots to, and I need help, which is why Kerrie is saying supervision is a good, strong option in those cases. Because if you're going a bit nuts with it, thinking, I'm not sure now, is this is this right, or is it just me? When you're starting to question yourself, that's when you really need a third party, isn't it?
It's a responsibility as well, because it comes to a point where it's a real personal responsibility in that situation.
Yes. But it sounds like you did handle it resourcefully. If at any point you feel like you've lost your resourcefulness, that's when you need support, isn't it? And I guess it's unfortunate, but what I would say is, you get sent things to test you, and maybe this isn't true, but maybe it's a useful perspective. Situations are sent to test you. This is sort of your call to adventure, to say, where's my limit? What am I comfortable? Because there's an egoic trap, Simon, that sounds like you didn't fall in, which is to go gung-ho and think, I can rescue this person, I can help, and I can sort this guy's head out. You didn't fall into that egoic trap, because that would have been naive of a more risky nature, naivety of a more risky nature, let's say. I think you did well. I don't think there's any rule book for what you've been through.
I agree, and it's a really great question and a topic that we do cover in training, actually, because it's such a fine line, and we have a lot of responsibility in our mentoring hands, so to speak. So it's now almost 1 minute to go, so I'm going to call it a day on the questions. And
that was quick.
Julie, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. And before we wrap up, I'd just like to present you. The ABM team have asked if I can present to you an honorary fellowship of the ABM in thanks for everything that you do for us here at the association. This is it.
Oh, look at that.
This will be in the post, framed. And it's a mark of respect and thanks for just always being there. You're very quick to support us in events such as this, the conference, whenever I need or anybody needs a quick sort of check-in, you're always there. And we just wanted to recognise that with this.
Oh, you're very welcome, and thank you for that. That's lovely. It's a certificate. I've got a certificate. Thank you so much. That's amazing. Wow. That was a surprise to see that on screen.
Thanks for all our guests for joining us today. And I look forward to seeing you all at the next event. And there's lots going on, so tune in and hop on.
Thank you, everybody.